Hello and good morning. As always, pop into the chat box. Let us know you're there. Give a second or two before I get started. Today, I'm on my own. Kristen and John and the rest of the crew are at taping. So I believe they're in Kentucky. And so it is you and I today. So some of your questions may not get answered as fast as usually Kristen can do for me. But good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Arda, Kyla, and Lynn. I'm so glad that you guys are here with us today. To begin with, I would very much like to share with you some projects from the past, and they're still coming in from our New York beauty. And here is one. I believe her name is Giuliana. She has done hers in very bright fabrics. Kind of fun cleaning out the stash, and I can't wait to see how it all comes about. And the outside border there looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So there is another one that we have from the past, and then we have one more that I'd like to share with you. This is from this project that we're doing now, some of my favorite blocks, and this is Jerry's, and she's done a beautiful job with her triple triangles in the corners, and she looks like she's going to be putting together a very soft looking quilt. So both very just beautiful. Thank you for sharing those with us. And today we're gonna, the first thing that I want to do is to remind all of you that are with us on a fairly regular basis, but I need to say this from time to time. When I'm looking at my screen on my left hand side, it may be on your right or whatever, is my name, D. Christopher, and right under it is my email address. We have the forum on thequiltshow.com for you to ask questions and add your thoughts or your pictures or whatever. And please, do that on the forum. We also have on Instagram, D Saturday Sampler. And if you could post your pictures there, people like to go to Instagram and see those. I try to get them, sometimes up on there when I can. And the other thing is that when you have questions here, put them on the forum, or please email me. My email address is right there on the screen. So if for those questions, then the first thing that I want to do is to share with you last week's block. There were some questions that came across about what the block looked like, and to help with that. So again, that star block that we made last time, I know that the fabrics that I've chosen from Three Sisters Honey Bloom is might be a little bit pale on your screen, but there's that very pointed star that I used the Tri-Rex rulers with, and very easy to go together. And also talked about changing the size of the block, or for a baby quilt, it would be lovely as one very large 36-inch block would make a great baby quilt. So with that, today we're going to look at a block that I think I've talked about or shared with you in the past, and it's called the Hunter Star. So if you have your pattern downloaded, and again, you can go to thequiltshow.com, and across the top there's a bar, and if you click on Learn, and then on the left hand side, down the left hand side of there, you'll find D Saturday Sampler, and if you go and scroll to the bottom of that, you'll find the patterns. This one, when you first look at it, looks quite confusing because I've only indicated by dark and light. Now, I have seen this block done in complete scrappy blocks, which is a lot of fun. But again, you really have to pay attention to value when you do that. So this is only indicated here by light and dark. Here is the start of my block. We're going to put the bottom row on, but you can see that you really need high contrast to get the idea of what this block looks like. And personally, even though I made it 12 inches to fit with the other blocks that I am doing, the larger this block seems to get, the more that I personally like it, simply because of the high contrast, and the way it's put together is really quite lovely, and I do like it quite a bit. And so the second thing that I want to share with you is, I don't have it indicated on the pattern, but each of these squares are finishing at 3 inches. So unfinished, they're 3 inches, and so it's a 3-inch finished block. Then the total block here that we're doing is 12 inches to kind of keep it coordinated. If some of you are using the same line of fabrics or whatever for all of your blocks so that you can put them together. So if you take a color pencil or something and fill in the dark, and if you want to fill in the light with a high contrast color, I think it would be a little bit easier for you to see as you're working along with the block. And so the other thing that I want to talk about a little bit when you find a block like this, because this is a 4-patch in the corner, and the total block needs to end at 3 inches. So to get what you need for these squares is 1.5 inch, because 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So you want 1.5 inch half square triangles. I am not a huge fan of making half square triangles, to be honest with you. So many quilt blocks have them. It's like a staple of quilting. But what I do have in my arsenal, and they come in a variety of sizes, but these star single papers. And the reason that I truly like them, and I share on my show those things that I find to be helpful to me. We have so many different ways of attacking, how we go about doing things, and I'm giving you my version of it. And with this block is so much easier, quicker, and I get a little bit more accuracy. In fact, I get kind of a lot of accuracy using these star singles. And I know that the store has, on the Quilt Show, has carried them, and I'm sure that they still do. And we don't have Kristen to tell us that or give us a link today, so you'll have to go into the shop. But the size up here indicates what size it's finished at. And it gives you directions right on the front of the package, but it also gives you directions. Let me get that out of the way. It also gives you directions right on the pattern itself. And I know that probably on screen you cannot, see this. But it tells you right there 1 1/2 inch finished block, which these need to be. And they tell you to cut 5-inch squares of fabric. I will tell you that 5-inch works. but it's close. And if there's any wiggle room, you lose it a little bit. So I usually cut my squares about a 1/4 inch bigger than it tells me to on these papers. And you're placing 2 squares right sides together. So your dark fabric and your light fabric right sides together. And they say to pin. I will often, instead of pinning, because pinning again, you know, causes the fabric sometimes to move, or when you take the pin out, you have a little movement of fabric and stuff. So I just take my, you know, glue stick pin, and I will drop a piece of glue on it, and a piece of glue, I will drop some glue on. And then you sew along the dotted lines. And that's what we're going to do today. Here is number 1, and basically, hopefully you can, you know, sew on the lines. You sew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you continue until you finish at 8. And then once you have it finished sewn, you cut on all of the solid lines. And I usually cut around the outside first, cut through the middle on one of the sides, and then cut it in half here. And I'll do all of that on screen for you so you can see that process. Take the paper away, and I don't have to trim my half square triangles. And I think that's why I do not care for half square triangles so much, just because it's a little out of focus. Okay, let me see if I can get it more in focus today. I don't know if that helped or not. But that is what I can do. Sorry about that, Mary, for today. I'm not sure why that's going on. So let's get to work on our block. Let me get the paper out of the way for our pattern. So for each of these corners here, for each of the corners and this center block, I used these papers. So for my solid pieces, I cut my 3.5 inch squares that go in the, you know, in the center of each side. So my solid squares are here. There is a dark and a light on each side, and there will be on the bottom as we finish that. So the first thing that we do is I've got my two, my light and my dark fabric. I'm putting them right sides together. They're a little bit longer because they've got, I didn't bother cutting the selvage really off of it. And now I have it more or less lined up. It's a little bit bigger than my paper. And I've laid my paper on top of that. I'm not necessarily going to, because I have plenty of room on this one. It was kind of the leftover at the end. So I have quite a bit of space on there. But before I sew, I just want to go back and double check if there's any questions. Kyla, I like that. The U.S. Open ends tomorrow, so get your sewing done. Good job. Oh, Kyla, I love that she's doing them all in red, white, and green for Christmas. I think that's a great idea. All right. And Laverne, I love him too. I love him too. So, I didn't see any other questions, so I'm going to move the camera, if I can get to it, and we'll get, my foot pedal has been running away. I'm going to have to readjust what's under it. But basically, you're going to watch me hopefully sew on the lines. I think that's the hardest part of these papers, is making sure that, you know, you get on the line every time. And when I don't quite hit the little dot at the end, I'll just raise my needle, straighten it out. That little, my leader always bugs me and gets in the way with my papers as I'm sewing. So I make sure I cut it off. This is one of those times again where I just need to scooch it over just a little bit. And I, you know, set my sewing stitch at, you know, I have it automatically sat all the time at 2.0. And I'm really liking that setting, and especially, you know, for something like this, as you know, it's always good to have a little bit tighter stitch. The paper supposedly comes off a little bit easier. I tend not to do it when I'm doing my I'm just going to run that right off. And all right, let's go. And I'm sorry, there seems to be quite the glare today, and I've tried to adjust that a little bit, so I hope you'll bear with me with that. So now I'm going to cut on each side, and I think I need to stand a little bit for this so I can see that a little bit better. And what I try to do is put my ruler so that I can do two sides at once, and I just check the lines all the way around. Like I said, I find myself cutting through, you know, the center. And then I cut each of these in half. And here is where, you know, I really want to get on the line, because, you know, these cuts that I'm doing right now is where my accuracy comes in for this. But for you know, in here, it's not as crucial. So just for the sake of speed, I will tend to I live dangerously, and, you know, cut it pretty close to the center of that. All right. Now, what you know, it's taking the the paper's off, and I just, use my thumb, and the papers all come off pretty quickly and pretty easily. This paper's a little thicker than, like the Carol Doak papers and stuff, but it's still not a problem. And you could wet it if you still wanted to with those water pens, and make that happen. And I want to say, as I'm going to get 4 of these so I can do one of the sections for you. I'm not going to do necessarily all of it on screen, because if you see it, once, I think hopefully you can go back if you need to watch it again. And if you have any further questions after the show is over, again, I just want to say again, my name and email address is on the screen, and please, send your questions, if not to me directly, put them on the forum, because your questions and the answers that we try to give, and on YouTube, if you put them there, is very helpful to everyone. And then I simply, as you know, I always set my seams, because it just helps with getting, a nice seam line where it's not folded over and you're losing some space. And then I have my, my 2 half square triangles, and I'll just snip the little bunny ears, so they just take up space in the seam line. So I try to get those out of the way. But if you can see right there, fits right into my 2-inch square, and once they're sewn together, I will have my 1.5 inch. So I think the hardest part of this whole pattern and block is following the order that they go in. So I need to make sure that for my top row, my dark is up to the left, my light is to the bottom. So I'm going to sew those 2 top pieces this way. And again, pin if you need to, with, anything that's, 3 inches or smaller. I don't necessarily always pin. And then there's also the acorn glue if you and your machine struggle with that just a little bit. So I've got those 2. Now I want to press my next 2. I run the side of my iron down the seam line gently, and then just let the iron sit for a second or 2 to let the heat sink those seams in. And then again, I want to look at my pattern, and you cannot see it, I don't think, there. But now I want the bottom row, and I want the light to the top and the dark to the back, so it makes that angled diamond point as I sew it together. And this is just where you just have to pay attention. Mostly is what it is. It's paying attention. So let's take, for now, those two. And you want to press, so I have my dark and dark. I'm going to press those to the left so that my seams butt up against each other. There are those who prefer with a block like this to open the seams, and if that's you, feel free to do that. And this one I am going to press to the right. It looks like I'm pressing to the left, but I turned the block upside down. And sometimes that's where I get confused. Alright, so I have my light, light, dark, dark, light, putting those two together. And I do pin at this point because I really don't want that center to slide. And as I share often, I put my pin from the top right and I come down on the bottom, to the left of the seam line, and I go about 1/8 of an inch. And the key here is to go straight down when you put your pin in, not at an angle. Go straight, and I did not show that very well, did I? All right, let me do that again. I didn't have my camera moved. So I have these two butted up, pressed one to the left and one to the right. I put my pin straight down, and then I turn it because I find that when I don't go straight down first, I will often move the fabric with the pin, and so that's why I pin that way. And again, my apologies for not getting that camera turned. And this way, and the reason I do that, if you can see right here, I can take one stitch, and I'm over the seam line, and I'm careful not to hit the pin, and then I move that here, and then I can sew off the end and keep that. And if I've got my half square triangles all done, I can continue to sew these, chain sew them, and all my corners. And then I like to take my pointer and my thumb on each side of the seams, and I'll twist one away from my body and one towards my body. Get that little cuteness in the middle, because they're the tiniest little blocks. I press those, and then I'll come back to the front side, and here is where I will press the seam line at the, in the direction that it is moving. And just let that, and now I have that block that was here, my dark, the lights here, and the lights here, and now I have that corner, and I can sew the light, the dark, and I can add my other end to that, and I will have a row that looks basically like this. My row, when I get all four of them sewn together, will be this row right here. Okay? Let me just check and see if there were any other questions. What is the seam guide on your machine? I have a B770 and I need that. If you're talking about the orange mat that I have on the bottom, it's called a Sew Steady mat, and you can find that in a number of places. I don't know that they have them in the store at this point, but it's called the Sew Steady mat. I have my D 1/4 inch, my 97D foot on my machine. Does pulling the papers off not pull the stitches or stretch the stitches? Pauline, it's a good question. They can, and that's why if you are sewing with a 2.0 stitch length, it's a lot tighter. And like I said, when I do my stitches, I fold the paper back and I will run my thumbnail along it, and that kind of breaks up the paper a bit, and then I just hold this one, firmly down, and kind of, trying to do it slowly, rip that, and then this is, not attached, and it doesn't really pull out the stitches if you're careful. A 2.0 stitch length helps with that a lot, and so hopefully that answers that. Where is this pattern D? This is the first Saturday I've watched, and I would love to make this quilt. Lynn, all of these patterns, I'm just doing patterns that I like, I've been wanting to make, or I have made in the past, and they're just favorites. And I'm finding that I'm doing a lot of stars. I'll have to make sure that I mix it up a little bit better as I choose each week. Go to thequiltshow.com. Across the top, you'll see a bar, and go to Learn and click on Learn. When you get to the Learn page on the left-hand side, it will say D Saturday Sampler. Click on that, and you will see patterns and documents. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and you will find these star blocks. And they'll all look very similar to this, so that they're easy to find which ones I've done so far. For the diagonal cut where you don't need to be so precise, I use scissors. Yeah, good for you. I think it's just, do you have the lever on that AC lowered? Yes, I do. Today I remembered to have it lowered. I can only find one pattern for a log cabin block. Otherwise, you can only find videos in your classroom. I wish that Kristen was here. I will let her know that, and I will try to put something in the forum to answer that question. So if you go back and look in the forum, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom and for these block patterns, but they are there. Well, Lynn, thank you for saying that. And I'm so sorry about the focus of of it today. I don't know what is going on with the cameras or lighting. Nothing is different with lighting that I can find. So I apologize for that. Hopefully next week I'll have figured that all out, and we won't have that issue again with that. So we'll be working on another block for next week. It's kind of a scrappy star, and it looks very similar to the center of this one, except that it is very scrappy and showing you a different way to put those half square triangles together. So I hope you'll join us next week for that. And again, if you have any questions or you need any other help, please put your questions into the forum, and we'll get to answering them. Sometimes it's me, sometimes Barbara Black will help me with the answering of the questions, or my email address is right there on the screen, and you are more than welcome to email me directly at my email address, and we'll take care of that. And if it's not something that I can do on the email quickly and easily, we can talk then by phone or whatever else, depending on what's going on. So please have a great week, and we'll see you next week with our next block. Thank you. Bye-bye.